The 49ers quietly dropped a major update that somehow slipped under the radar, and I have to say, I am genuinely surprised nobody is talking about it. The big news is about Nick Bosa and Micah Williams, and it might be one of the most important updates we get all off-season. John Lynch confirmed that both players are expected to return around training camp, which is huge. These are two of your starting defensive ends, and if they both come back on schedule, it changes the entire outlook of the defense. The Niners can still look to add more pass rush help. But the fact that Bosa and Williams are trending toward being ready is a massive boost. What makes this update even more significant is what it means for the rest of the roster. Nick Bosa is not just a great player. He is the kind of guy who elevates everyone around him when he is on the field. The whole defense plays better. You can literally feel the difference in energy and effort when he is healthy. John Lynch even said that Bosa is one of those players that lifts the entire team. And that is not an exaggeration. He is the tide that raises all boats. And having him back would be a huge win for the Niners, of course. There are still other injury concerns. Alfred Collins suffered a shoulder injury against Seattle and it may require surgery. It's strange that we're still waiting for clarity on that after for days. The timeline is still unclear, and that uncertainty is frustrating. At the same time, Nick Martin was cleared from concussion protocol, which is a relief. That situation dragged on for a long time, so it's good to finally get some closure there. One of the more unusual updates from the press conference was the Niners looking into the electrical substation situation. John Lynch confirmed that the team has been reaching out to anyone and everyone to see if a study exists. I'm not going to dive into conspiracy theories or anything like that, but it's reassuring that the team is taking it seriously and looking into it. The fact that they are doing their due diligence is enough for me. At least for now. What stood out most to me was how John Lynch opened the press conference. He started by emphasizing player safety and health, and he made it clear that the organization is committed to doing everything possible to address the injury issues. He said they are turning over every stone to figure out what's going on. And that's a major statement. A lot of fans, myself included, are going to hold him to that. The Niners have had too many seasons with significant injury problems, and only a few exceptions where things were relatively clean. It has been a recurring issue, and it's something the team needs to take seriously now. I will say this in defense of the organization just a bit. Some of the major injuries like Bosa and Warner happened in games, and were not necessarily training issues. The same could be said for Micah Williams. It's hard to blame the team for those kinds of injuries, because they are part of the game. George Kittle's injury history is a bit more complicated. You can argue that some of his injuries could be tied to training or workload, but even then, it's not entirely fair to pin it all on the team. After all, Kittle has spent his entire career with the 49ers, so it's a complex situation when it comes to Ricky Pearsall. The argument is more valid. Fans often believe he is injury-prone, and the PCL injury situation is tricky because it was a major impact injury in a game. He took a huge hit on that knee, and it was a brilliant catch, but it took him a long time to recover. You could argue that the team may have let him come back too soon. The timeline kept extending, and it seemed like he was always 1 week away. That does raise questions about whether the training staff is making the right calls if he was hitting all his metrics. What were those metrics? Was there a buffer built in to ensure he was truly ready? Those are the kinds of decisions that happen behind the scenes, and fans don't always get to see them. The more legitimate argument against the team is the pattern of soft tissue injuries. Guys are up 1 week and down the next. And that does point to a potential issue with training, conditioning, or recovery. Tatum is a prime example of that. He keeps getting hurt, then coming back, then getting hurt again. Those kinds of injuries can be concerning because they can indicate deeper issues within the organization's approach to player health. But the key takeaway is that the Niners are now making a major commitment to not leaving any stone unturned. That includes evaluating personnel and ensuring the staffing is equipped to properly handle the injury situation. This has been a recurring problem for years, and if the team is finally taking it seriously, that's a big step forward. After back-to-back seasons with significant injury issues, it feels like the team needs to be more aggressive in how they handle it. And from what John Lynch said, it sounds like he is taking that approach. On top of that, there were some updates on free agency. Jawin Jennings was one of the players discussed, and John Lynch said he would love to have him back, but we will see how it goes. Honestly, that felt like the most uncertain update of the day. It sounded like GM speak, and it almost felt like an admission that Jennings might be gone. But I still want to hold out hope because he is a player who understands the system and the offense. He is reliable, he blocks hard, and he brings a certain toughness and culture to the team that you don't want to lose. The 49ers have already let go of players like Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga, who were culture players and pillars of the team. Losing those guys was tough, and Jennings fits into that category too. He is the kind of player who sets the tone for the offense, and it would be a shame to see him leave. The Niners would lose not just a player, but a piece of their identity. And that is why I hope they find a way to keep him. Kyle Shanahan also mentioned that the team would like to re-sign Eddie Pearson, which makes sense because he was reliable and effective this year. Keeping the kicking crew together, including Thomas Morstead and John Wolford if possible, is also a priority. Stability in special teams is underrated, and I think the Niners should keep that unit intact. Now, the bigger topic that everyone is talking about is the defensive coordinator situation. Robert Saleh's potential departure has downstream effects that are often overlooked. Shanahan mentioned that he expects Saleh to request interviews with current Niners staff members if he goes to Tennessee. That is completely normal, but it's something that people don't always consider. The team could lose valuable coaches if Saleh leaves, and that would be a major blow. That is why it is so important for the Niners to promote from within if possible. Guys like KJ Wright are well respected and have connections throughout the league. He has worked with some of the best linebackers in the game, and losing him would be a significant hit. The organization needs to find ways to keep these quality coaches in place, because they are a big part of the team's success. Kyle Shanahan also said that the search for the defensive coordinator will include internal candidates and outside options. Gus Bradley is the obvious internal candidate, and he seems like the frontrunner. The team is also expected to interview other names, and that process will be extensive. It's a big decision, and it will shape the defense moving forward. Before the press conference, Richard Sherman weighed in on the open defensive coordinator position, and he mentioned Jim Schwartz. Sherman said that if Schwartz does not get the job with the Browns, the Niners will throw everything at him to try and bring him to San Francisco. That would be a home run hire. Schwartz is a respected coach, and if he comes to the Niners, it would be a huge upgrade. Another name mentioned was Raheem Morris, and those are just a few of the potential candidates. There was also news about Brian Flores, who signed with the Minnesota Vikings. That means he is no longer available, which is disappointing for Niners fans who hoped he might be a sneaky option for defensive coordinator. If he does not get a head coaching job, he will stay in Minnesota, which is a big commitment for the Vikings and a missed opportunity for the Niners. And then there is the situation with Brandon Aiyuk, which has been discussed endlessly across the internet. John Lynch was asked about the situation, and he admitted that he wishes he knew what happened. He said he could not help with an explanation and looked at reporters like he had nothing. He also confirmed that it is safe to say Aiyuk has played his last snap with the Niners. That is not surprising, but hearing it confirmed is still a bitter pill to swallow. What was interesting is that Lynch started to say, "I will look long and hard at what we could have done," and then corrected himself and said, "what I could have done." That slight shift in wording suggests he is taking some personal responsibility for how the situation played out. Both Lynch and Shanahan had their hands in the situation, especially when they chose not to take the trade that was on the table. Shanahan even ran up the stairs to make sure they kept Aiyuk. And you can understand why. The guy is an incredible talent, but something clearly wasn't right. I'm not going to speculate on his mental health because none of us know the full story, and it's not something we should dive into, but the fact remains that something was off. Aiyuk clearly messed up the situation, and the only saving grace is that the Niners were able to recoup some money through the trade. That will help the team going forward, but it is not nearly as valuable as having him available for the end of the season and the playoffs. Kyle Shanahan also mentioned the last time he tried to contact Aiyuk. He said the last time he heard from him was when he tried to get a hold of him and could not. He tried multiple times and could not get a response, and that matches what others experienced. It is a situation that is hard to explain, and Shanahan admitted that he had never seen anything like it in 22 years of coaching. That at least provides some context and suggests this was a unique situation. Even though it was unique, the organization still had warning signs. Aiyuk had shown red flags in the past, and the team chose to stick with him. They believed they could make it work based on their relationship with him. They gave him a massive contract and he did not play well in the limited games. He was healthy enough to play. That is why this injury update about Michael Williams and Nick Bosa is so important if they can get healthy and participate in training camp. It will be a huge advantage. Kyle Shanahan has often talked about how important training camp is for building physical toughness and resilience. With the league limiting contact so much, it is hard to simulate game-like situations. Training camp is where players get those hits and build that callus, and having Bosa and Williams there would be massive. It is a big deal for the defense to have them back and healthy now. One of the biggest questions that comes up when we talk about the Niners is what happens next on the defensive side of the ball, especially with the defensive coordinator situation looming. If Robert Saleh does end up leaving, the ripple effects could be massive. It's not just about replacing him, it's about who comes in, who stays, and how the entire defensive identity is maintained. The fact that Kyle Shanahan openly discussed the potential for staff members being requested to join Saleh in Tennessee tells you everything you need to know. This is a real concern, and it's not something fans should overlook. When a head coach moves, the staff often moves with him, and that can leave gaps in the organization that are hard to fill. KJ Wright is a perfect example of a coach the Niners cannot afford to lose. He is respected across the league, and he has developed a reputation for being a strong leader and a teacher of linebackers. The last thing the Niners need is for him to get poached by another team, because that would create a real void, and it's not just about losing a coach. It's about losing a culture builder. The Niners have built a strong defensive culture, and a lot of that is due to the staff's consistency and the way they develop players. If Saleh leaves and takes several key staff members with him, the Niners could be forced into a rebuilding phase on defense, and that is the last thing they need after 2 seasons of injury problems. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to For Niners Zone and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the San Francisco 49ers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Whispers around the league have started to grow louder, and this one carries the weight of a seismic shift in the NFC. According to growing locker room chatter and front office speculation, DeForest Buckner could be on a path back to San Francisco, re-emerging as the unquestioned leader of the 49ers defense. Nothing is official. Nothing is signed. But the mere possibility has already ignited debates, hopes, and cautious excitement among insiders. Buckner's name still resonates deeply within the organization. His previous tenure left a lasting imprint, not just because of his production in the trenches, but because of the authority he carried on the field. Sources close to the situation suggest that the 49ers are quietly exploring ways to reunite with a player who embodies their defensive identity: physical, disciplined, and relentless. The idea is not simply to add talent, but to restore a commanding presence capable of elevating everyone around him. From a strategic standpoint, the fit feels almost too natural. San Francisco's defense thrives when the interior line collapses pockets and dictates tempo, and Buckner has long been viewed as one of the rare defensive linemen who can tilt an entire game plan without needing headline-grabbing numbers. The speculation points to a vision where he would return not as a supporting piece, but as the emotional and tactical centerpiece of the unit. Skeptics, of course, point to financial gymnastics and long-term planning as obstacles, and they are not wrong. Any move of this magnitude would require creativity and conviction from the front office. Still, the rumor persists, fueled by the belief that championship windows are fragile, and that proven leaders are worth the risk. For now, it remains a tantalizing what-if, the kind of rumor that refuses to die. If it gains traction, the 49ers defense could soon be anchored by a familiar face, one ready to reclaim his role as the heartbeat of the line. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the San Francisco 49ers, make sure to subscribe to For Niners Zone and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.